In the last video, we discussed about how to set up PyCharm and we run our first code print hello world. And today we are officially starting Python, how to make the Python file, what variables and data types are, and what are the different types of data types. Moving forward, let's start with how to create a Python file. If you're going to create a Python file, you need to write your file name .py and it creates a Python file. You can name the file anything. For example, name.py. To denote it's a Python file, we use .py. So why do we use the .py? To label the file as a Python. So like it said, .py is a file extension to label the file as Python code. It helps interpreters see what file to run. Since we have so many files in our system, running a file with right interpreter is very important. There is a case, right, where you can just make a file, main.txt file. It's a text file. And if I write the right code, right syntaxes with right code, I can run this Python main.txt and it would still work. But we don't want that because this would be just confusing. That's why we don't use this. And it's not going to give you special syntaxes and stuff. Like in here, if I run something like, as you can see, it's giving me suggestions. But if you write something here, no suggestions. So I don't know how to complete this. It's a very bad practice. I'm just showing this for the fun of it. So don't use .txt file. Now that we know what .py is used for, let's move on to variables. For technical definition, a variable is a named storage location in memory that holds a value which can be referenced or manipulated during program execution. Let's give you an example. Suppose you have a container and it has some stuff in it. You open the box and see it has toys in it. So what you do is you make a label out of it. Label named toys. Container labeled toys, got the toys in them. So that way you can reference it. So in the same way, variable points to the memory address of the stored data. When you see a memory address, it's something like OBJ1200X or something like that, right? Now, we can't always remember this memory address. So to make it easier to point to this memory address, we use variables. Now we know what variables are. Let's move to variables naming conventions. So we have set different naming conventions, different rules by developers to understand our code better, to write our code better and easier. So when you go to work, you are not the only one who is reading your code, and everyone is reading those code. And if we all have different ways of writing codes, it's going to be hard for everyone to understand what code it is. So we have set some conventions while coding to make our life easier. So in Python, when you name a variable, what you have to do is remember is three things. Snake case, they need to be in lowercase and are separated by underscore instead of space. The 1 and 3 are kind of the same thing, right? So what I mean is you can write a name like this. Full name equals to John Doe. And this can run. This code can run easily. But what the naming convention says is we gotta write it this way so we understand this is a variable. It's not a class or list. Now, what are data types? Data types classify the kind of value a variable holds and determines what operation can be performed on it. We have 16 total data types. You can look at it. We are going to focus on the 4 essential ones: numeric types, text types, boolean types, and none types. What is data types? It's like telling a variable what it can do and not do. So you can add 1 plus 2, right? But you can't add like 1 plus 2. What we need to tell them is this 1 is a number and 2 is a character, the character or a word. So when we do this, when we tell the computer a certain variable are different types of data and you cannot add them like this, that's what data types do. So we have different types of data and it will help us perform different tasks. So starting with numeric types, as the name suggests, it is the type to store number data. This numeric type stores number. Now we have 3 different ways to store numbers: integers, we have floats, and we have complex. So what does integer mean? They store integer data. right? So for example, a is equals to 19. Now this my friends are integer. Why? Because it does not contain a decimal. It does not contain 0.000 stuff. If you want something like .000, what we're going to do is we're going to create a float. Price equals to 19.24. Now this is a float number because it has 000 as decimals at the ending. Floats are used for precise measurements like height, weight, price, breadth, and everything that needs a precise measurement. We use float. For example, it would be pi 3.1415. So this would be a float too because it has point and numbers. Those are float types. Now, if we move on to complex numbers, what we can see is when we are solving a mathematical or engineering problem, what we have is 1 plus 2. We have an imaginary number, right? And we have a real number and an imaginary number. And when we have to write this complex numbers, that's when we use complex numbers. That reminds me, when you're using float, you can also include numbers like 1.e4 or something like this, seen in the calculator, e to the power 4. Now that we understand what numeric types are and what integers stores values without decimals, floats store with decimals and kind of complex numbers, and complex numbers store imaginary plus real numbers. So those were numeric types. Now moving on to text types, we have strings. It's pretty easy. Text types only have string. So string, what is string? So string is a list of characters sticking together. It's basically a name. This is a string. Let's say num1 equals to 1. This is a string too, but we have written 1. So let me tell you why this is a string. Let's move here. As you can see, sequence of characters, like I said, a list of characters sticking together, encased in quotes, single, double, or triple. So whenever you are using a string, what you need to do is encase them in quotations like this. It can be single, it can be double, or it can be triple quotations. So as you can see, this is what strings are. They are just a list of characters sticking together, binded by quotations. It can contain letters, numbers, symbols, and spaces. And they are immutable, cannot be changed after creation. They cannot be changed after creation. The third type is Boolean. So what is Boolean? Well, these are 0 and 1 in binary. So what are 0 and 1? 0 being false and 1 being true. So if we do something like is equals 19 and print something like is greater than 18, then we get true. Or we can just do is adult equals to, and we put a variable inside another variable, right? And then we print is adult. And if we print it, yes, true, he is an adult. This can be used for different things to verify age, to verify if the user has accepted the terms and conditions or not. So those are the things where booleans can be used. Represents the truth value, only two possible values, true or false, used for conditions and logical operations, results from comparison operators. Like I said, is adult, age is greater than 18, then true, else false, right? Moving on to the final type, non-types. Non-types represent the absence of value. Non-types are a bit tricky and it's kind of easy too. So none are nothing. It's not zero, it's not null, but just nothing, void. So that's what you can call it. This none type is used specifically when you don't have a value to put in when you are creating the variable. So you might want a variable of is later on, but you don't have a value right now. So you put none. And so later on in the code, after you write code, and you need that variable. So then when you can do is 19, as you can see. You'll understand about none more later on when we start using functions and all that, when we have global variables and we have local variables and all that. That's when we are going to use none types. Type and variable name. So what does this type do is adult equals true, true is equals 19, full name equals John Doe, and what else? What else we have? Let's say height equals 5.9. And if we take all this, we have made a boolean, a integer, a string, and a float. The way we made them, it's no different than making each other. Like is adult, it's the same thing as is. We haven't done anything different. How is this a boolean and how is this a int? So in case of Python, Python is a dynamically typed language where you don't need to specify what kind of data type we are defining in a variable. In Python, we don't really need to explain what type of data is in the variable because it will do it automatically because it's a dynamically typed language. But when you go around, look at other programming languages like Java or C, you need to type the data yourself, what kind of data it is, data type yourself. And now, how to know which types there are? So what we can do is print type is, comma, is, and print type is adult is adult. So if we print this, right, we can see class int 19 is int, John Doe is string, 5.9 is a float, and true is a boolean. So that's what type does. This allows us to see what type of data is given in the variable. Now, finally, let's talking about comments. There are 3 ways to comment this thing. First, you can write multiple lines of comment here, and you can use this to write comments, multiple lines of comments, and to write a single line of comment, you need to do just hash and comment. That's how you write a single line of comment. And that is a wrap for today. I'll see you in the next video.